Welcome back to the Liberal Union 9/11. Tonight, we begin with a moment that officials in Washington quietly feared but hoped would never arrive. A moment when fragile diplomatic momentum collapsed, not after months of negotiation, but within a matter of hours, shattering expectations for de-escalation and exposing the reality behind Moscow's latest diplomatic posture, as Russia abruptly rejected key elements of a US-backed peace framework, triggering one of the Biden administration's most urgent warnings since the war began, and prompting an immediate, calculated response from Ukraine that has now placed NATO capitals on heightened alert. For weeks, there had been subtle signals, not public Kremlin statements or formal communiques, but indicators recognized by intelligence analysts who track Russia's patterns closely. Sudden shifts in encrypted military communications, unexplained repositioning of strategic assets, the quiet recall of diplomats from European capitals, and an unusual silence where routine briefings once occurred. History has shown that when Russia goes quiet, escalation often follows, and American officials monitoring these developments grew increasingly concerned that Moscow was using diplomacy not as a path toward peace, but as cover to buy time, test Western unity, and prepare its next move. The Biden administration had cautiously believed that recent back-channel discussions suggested Moscow might be open to negotiation, particularly as pressure mounted on Vladimir Putin from economic strain, battlefield losses, and internal political tension. Yet that optimism collapsed when Russia formally withdrew its conditional acceptance of three core provisions: Ukraine's territorial integrity, long-term security guarantees tied to Western defense structures, and accountability mechanisms for documented violations of international law. Provisions that had reportedly been acknowledged by Russian negotiators only days earlier. This abrupt reversal was not simply a diplomatic setback, it was a strategic signal, and Washington treated it as such, convening emergency consultations and issuing a warning that departed from the usual carefully hedged language, describing Russia's actions as destabilizing, provocative, and indicative of a broader recalculation that could extend far beyond Ukraine. What made this moment especially significant is that Ukraine did not hesitate. Within hours of Moscow's rejection, Ukrainian forces launched a coordinated series of precision operations against high-value military targets in occupied territories, signaling clearly that escalation would be met decisively. These were not symbolic strikes or reactive skirmishes, but carefully planned operations aimed at disrupting Russia's operational nerve centers, including command and control facilities, ammunition depots, fuel storage hubs, air defense positions protecting logistics corridors, and intelligence infrastructure critical to coordinating southern operations. Ukrainian officials emphasized that the strikes were designed to preempt potential offensives, not provoke indiscriminate escalation, and that distinction matters because while Russia continues to target civilian infrastructure, Ukraine's response focused exclusively on military assets, reinforcing its position as a state defending sovereignty rather than pursuing terror. According to emerging reports, Ukrainian air forces conducted dozens of sorties across occupied regions, overwhelming Russian air defenses with simultaneous threats, while ground units struck supply convoys massing near front lines. Naval drones targeted maritime assets in the Black Sea, used to resupply Crimea. Cyber units disrupted Russian command communications, and special operations teams provided real-time targeting intelligence, demonstrating a level of coordination that underscores Ukraine's evolving capabilities and strategic maturity. This response complicated Moscow's calculations at a critical moment because it showed that Ukraine is not merely reacting to Russian aggression, but actively shaping the battlefield, anticipating moves, and imposing costs before Russia can consolidate its plans. Analysts now believe Russia's reversal of diplomacy was intended to probe Western resolve during a period of political uncertainty,
Yet the unified response from Washington and Kyiv produced the opposite result, reinforcing alliance cohesion rather than exposing division. The White House's rapid reaction sent a clear signal that diplomatic manipulation would not succeed, while reaffirming that U.S. support for Ukraine remains anchored in principles extending beyond this war, including the defense of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the post-World War II international order. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, addressing the nation, struck a measured but resolute tone, acknowledging the disappointment of failed diplomacy while making clear that Ukraine would not accept peace on terms that reward invasion or legitimize occupation, emphasizing that Ukraine seeks peace but will defend its land, its people, and its future if forced to do so. Meanwhile, intelligence assessments indicate that Russia's rejection of the peace framework coincided with broader military activity, including reinforcement of Eastern Front positions, increased Black Sea naval operations, heightened reconnaissance near NATO airspace, and intensified cyber attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, all suggesting coordinated preparation rather than de-escalation. This convergence of diplomatic rejection and military positioning has raised concern among U.S. and European officials that Moscow may be preparing for a new phase of pressure, whether through a renewed offensive, attempts to freeze the conflict on favorable terms, or actions designed to intimidate Western supporters, scenarios that carry serious risks for regional stability. At the same time, internal pressures within Russia continue to mount, with military hardliners demanding decisive action, economic elites seeking relief from sanctions, and ordinary citizens increasingly aware of the war's costs, placing Putin in a narrowing space where compromise threatens his narrative, but prolonged conflict strains the state. In that context, rejection of diplomacy may appear strong on the surface, yet it reflects vulnerability rather than confidence, a leadership boxed in by its own decisions. For Washington and his allies, the moment has reinforced the understanding that the outcome of this conflict will shape more than Ukraine's future, influencing global norms around the use of force, the credibility of international law, and the willingness of democratic states to defend those principles under pressure. As satellite imagery and communications intercepts continue to be analyzed, officials are watching closely for Russia's next move, aware that the coming days could determine whether this moment marks escalation or recalibration. What is clear tonight is that Ukraine's response demonstrated capability, restraint, and resolve, sending a message that territorial conquest will not be accepted, and attempts to manipulate diplomacy will be met with unity rather than hesitation. The situation remains volatile, the stakes extraordinarily high, and the next phase uncertain, but one reality stands out: Ukraine remains standing, Western support remains firm, and aggression continues to resist, ensuring that whatever comes next will be shaped not by silence or fear, but by deliberate choice, sustained resolve, and an alliance unwilling to look away as history unfolds.